What was your worst I overslept experience? Freshman year of college, I was in an English class that met every day at 7:40 am. Ugh. Probably such a bad time slot because it was a young interim professor teaching his first college class. The grade for the entire semester was based on a portfolio of papers you had written throughout, and there was no final test. The final was just to show up and give the professor your portfolio. The final day arrived and I had been out the night before, because of course I was 18 year on finals week. I woke up to a clock that said 8:25. Class ended at 8:30. Now I was a decent sprinter, but it was about 3/4 mile to the classroom, so I knew there was no hope. I got up and threw on last night's clothes and sprint downstairs to consider my options. Going along the road through campus and avoiding the central quad may save time. So I turned and went all out onto the road with a hope and a prayer, and there was the professor with all the portfolios under his arm, waiting for the bus. "Hey, can you take this? UHH. Sure. Bless your soul, interim professor whose name I forget." I was taking biology my freshman year of college, and to this day it was my most difficult class. The professor was really great. The only thing he was ever strict about was the final. He made a huge deal about not being late. He repeated about 10 times that if you were even a minute late to the final you wouldn't be allowed in and you wouldn't be able to retake it. I made sure to be the good student that I wasn't normally. I studied early so that I wouldn't have to cram. I went to bed early, set my alarm, laid out my clothes, the whole 9 yards. Something happened to my alarm as it didn't go off. I looked at my clock and had about 2 minutes until the final. There was no way I could get from my dorm to the class on time, but that didn't stop me from trying. I tore out of bed and just ran. I showed up at the door in my flannel pajamas, hair a mess, no shoes, crying, and breathing heavily from running. I was like 5 minutes late. I just looked at the professor, and before I could choke out the words between sobs, he just looked at me and said, "Take a seat and calm down. Finish the test when you're ready." I have no idea what I got on the final, but I did well in the class and now have a fear of not waking up to my alarm for important events. Not exactly oversleeping. Someone pulled the fire alarm in my dorm during finals. I was sleep deprived and genuinely slept through the blaring siren in the hall. The fire department goes door to door with a master key and checks every room. They found me asleep, middle of December, middle of the night. They me line up outside with everyone else wrapped in a skimpy blanket and flip-flops. They wouldn't let me dress until the building of 900 people was cleared. Probably a half hour, but it felt like a week. I also got fined $50 for ignoring a fire alarm. I slept in until 9:30 am thinking I had an exam at 2 pm. My friend turned up outside my flat phoning me and saying, "WTF, you doing? The exam is at 10 am. Panicking, I got dressed in less than 2 minutes and sprinted across the campus to where the exam was being held to find out I was right and it was at 2 pm. So while I didn't oversleep, I may as well have, considering I lost my morning off. I woke up in a cold sweat realizing I fell asleep with a massive term paper due that morning, and I didn't even start it because it wasn't mentioned by the teacher, just listed in the syllabus. And my something's not right senses decided to wake me up on the day it was due at 4 am. And I legitimately threw myself out of my bed, full speed ahead. Then my brain started to warm up and I realized that I am in a country 6,000 miles from my university, and that I graduated 5 years ago, and the professor no longer works there. I googled it, just to be sure. Those dreams are the worst. In the military, promotion results were coming out the next day. I had hurt my shoulder at the gym and the doc prescribed me a muscle relaxer. He told me to take 2, but I was talking with one of the nurses I worked with and she said to only take 1 to see how I would react to it. I took it at 7 pm the night before and woke up at 10 am the next morning. The promotion results had come at 8 am. I had a ton of missed calls and a lot of texts congratulating me. My commander was looking for me to present my certificate too. I got there at 11 am. Luckily, the nurse that I worked with had told them about the muscle relaxers, so I didn't get in trouble. It was still very embarrassing and I will never forget it. Great way to show that I deserved the promotion. Good thing you only took 1. I woke up at 1300 hours when I had a deadline by 12 o'clock. It really beats me why I didn't just turn it in before, but yeah, that was an expensive nap which costed a year of tuition. A few years ago I worked for a taxi hire car company in a semi-rural area. Amongst other things, one of my booked jobs was from Dep of Veteran Affairs. War vets got free transport to medical appointments, where they paid nothing but Dep paid the company. My Saturday shift started 6:30 am. Cause by 7 am I was supposed to be picking up an old man to run him to the hospital for dialysis. I woke up 6:40 am and when I realized the time, I leapt out of bed. I had no time to drive to the depot and swap cars, so I rang my boss in a panic. "Hi boss, it's alcoholic Snell. Frick, I slept in but I'm on my way in now. What do I do? I'll go pick up X in my car if I have to," and my boss is like, "Nah, you're good. Come in, grab the limo." The time they book for always factors in time to be early. Thanks for being honest. So in the end, I got the war vet to his appointment with about 5 minutes to spare. I miss those days. I had a great boss. Alcoholic Snell is a hilarious name for an ex-taxi driver. Last day of middle school, overslept the bus by 3 minutes, slip on all of my clothes and run out the door to try and make it to school on foot. The school is 2 miles from my house, almost entirely on an incline. My high school had long bus routes because we had like 3,000 kids in the suburbs. I was late for the bus one day and realized that biking the 2 miles to school was actually faster than the bus route. That combined with the fact that the bus got to school 15-20 minutes earlier than it needed to for me to be on time meant that taking my bike afforded me extra time to sleep or make a bigger breakfast. First period teacher in high school was an butthole who made a big stink when students showed up late. Me being the timid student that I was feared this heavily, so I made sure to be on time to avoid the embarrassment. One morning I woke up and realized I slept in and had very little time to get to school. I got changed in record speed and was out my door in minutes. The walk normally took about 15 minutes. I was at the front doors of the school in like 7 minutes, but the doors were locked. It was Saturday. I've shown up to work when it's closed, but I never did that with school. Work from 6:30 to 2:30. Took a nap when I got home and looked at the clock and it read 6:30 and I launched out of bed and got ready just to realize it was the same day. I love it when that happens during the winter. You take a nap and see the clock says 7 o'clock. You can't tell if it's in the morning or the afternoon because it's dark either way. Woke up at 4 PM for a 2 PM exam. Got into the exam hall when everyone else was handing in their exams. I wasn't allowed to write. Begged over email for a chance to write the exam. They agreed with certain conditions attached. Exam would only be worth 3/4 of what it normally is and my final grade also capped at 70%. I finished and got 70%. Later went on to drop out anyway. One time I went into a class on a seemingly normal Thursday, only to find once there that the professor was handing out exams. The final exam date had been moved and I hadn't studied for it literally at all, and this was a class I had skipped a few times. It took a lot of bartering over email to get the professor to let me retake a portion of it. At my first job, one night I forgot to set my alarm and overslept. I'd never been late to work before and was in tears, convinced I was going to be fired. My mom calmed me down and got me to work. No one even cared, so I panicked for nothing. No reasonable person is going to care if you're late once in a blue moon. Everyone is. It's unavoidable. Mostly people only care if it's habitual. I was a working student at a very prestigious horse barn. We started at 7 AM every morning, 7 days a week. I woke up one day and the clock said 7:56. I was literally screaming crap 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 as I ran down the stairs in my pajama pants because I figured I would just wear them all day and die or something. Get to the barn. No one is there. I check the clock. It's freaking 2 AM. I misread the 1:56 or 7:56 for some reason. Big but you moment. I go back up to my apartment and forget to set the alarm and sleep until 10:30 instead. I had to stat till 8 PM mucking out one of the paddocks in the pouring rain that night. I did a similar thing when I used to work as a church secretary. Luckily there was nothing urgent going on that day and they were pretty chill about it. But then, a lot of the time, it was just me and sometimes the pastor when he felt like popping in. I almost missed my college graduation because I had been up for days working on my final thesis. Graduation morning I was ready and was going to close my eyes for 20 minutes. I woke up and graduation was in 10 minutes. Never ran so fast in my life. I'm terrified of oversleeping on my graduation day this May. I looked at the schedule and we have to be there at some ungodly time. 6 AM or so. It's risky. My company had just merged with another company. No jobs were lost, but it deemed the higher ups it would be a great idea to rent a bus and drive us all to a big expo. Think European says. To get everyone to know each other. The bus was to leave at 5:30 AM on a Saturday. I had just moved out of my parents' house and I am not a morning person. So out of fear of oversleeping, I set 2 alarm clocks, both out of reach, requiring me to really get out of bed. In the days leading up to that Saturday, I prepared as much as possible, cleaned the whole house, made breakfast that Friday evening so I would require as little time as possible on that Saturday morning, and triple checked my alarms were set. Colleague asked Friday if I could provide a ride for him as his car had broken down. He lived nearby, so I told him no sweat, I'll come pick you up at 5 AM. Don't know how it happened, but I woke up at 10 AM that Saturday morning, alarms still going off and a few missed calls from aforementioned colleague. Not a good start after a merger. I dreaded the phone call to my manager. LOL. In the end, it all worked out fine, but I was really peart brain. Haha. I disputed a fine and was to present in front of a judge to explain it. I arrived 15 minutes late, hair's still wet and with mismatched socks. I was struggling to attach a tie too. The judge was not impressed, rejected my dispute and gave me a sermon about punctuality. That oversleeping cost me $600 and some dignity. That freaking sucks. I was in college and the department I was a part of decided to do a roast. It was on of the last days of the semester, so finals were here. Anyway, at the roast, someone brought homemade apple pie moonshine, made with Everclear. If you haven't had it before, don't. Bad idea. So we're passing around a half gallon of the stuff and you can't taste the alcohol. You can only feel it warm your throat, which is nice on a cold winter night in the Midwest. I decided to leave since I had a final the next morning and I wanted to get a decent amount of sleep. I wasn't drunk when I walked out the door, but as I was walking, the alcohol must have metabolized or something, cause when I was about 4 blocks from my dorm, I woke up the next morning an hour after my final. Failed the class and embarrassed myself since my friends were in said class too. Freaking Everclear. Yeah, I mean, you missed your final and everything, but I think you can be thankful here that you still have a liver and are alive. In November, I came an hour late to my security job. Apparently I set my Google Home alarm at the wrong time. I felt bad because the person I relief is really nice and her husband was waiting to leave also. To make things worse, she told me that her other relief comes late often, and one time he came an hour late and he kept calling dispatch saying that he is close by. I just started working there in October, so I didn't want to be that guy shows up super late. I'm always late, but when I worked security I made sure I was on time, cause I know how the end of a 12-hour shift feels. Not me, but one of my old teachers. When he was in college he had a huge final coming up in a few days and he had already spent the last few days pulling all-nighters and cramming. The final was on a Friday, and he decided he would get some sleep Thursday morning after another all-nighter. When he woke up, he asked his roommate what time it was. His roommate said, "It's 2 o'clock. Do you wanna know what day it is?" As it turned out, he slept from Thursday morning all the way to Saturday afternoon and completely missed his final. Luckily he immediately ran to find his professor, and she told him he could take it right then and there or else he got a 0. My GF was graduating college. She was French and so a lot of her relatives took the flight over to see her walk the stage too. Well, I turned off the alarm while still asleep. I rushed to where the ceremony was and people were coming out. Terrible. Waking up in a blind panic, getting dressed rapidly and rushing to work to arrive sweating, only to discover I wasn't in that day. Going to work on your day off. I've done that. I overslept because of alarm clock failure on a morning I was to play the organ for a 9 AM funeral. When the church office called, wondering why I wasn't there early as usual, I scrambled to get moving, making it to the church just as the hearse was pulling up to the front door to bring in the coffin. I have insomnia, and it gets really bad when I'm stressed. I was going through a depressive episode in my first year of university and I was unable to sleep one night before a midterm. which was at like 2:30 p.m. the following afternoon. So I studied around 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Then I finally felt sleepy, so I went to take a nap. I set my alarm for like 12 p.m. and everything. For some cruel reason, it didn't go off. I woke up at 3 p.m. Words cannot describe the chill that went down my back when I saw 3 p.m. on the clock. I jumped out of bed and was at the bus stop in 5 minutes. I ran to the lecture hall where the midterm was taking place in record time. But my school has a rule that after a half hour, you're not allowed in the room. With a 0 on this midterm, I would fail the class. And I couldn't drop it because I was already at the minimum classes needed to sustain full-time status. And if I lost full-time status, my school funding would be revoked. So I went home and cried for literally 12 hours and had to call a helpline to calm me down. The guy on the end, who sat there on the phone with me for legit 2 hours and is probably the reason I didn't do something drastic, because it felt like my world was ending, suggested getting a medical exemption on the basis of mental health. And I was lucky enough to have seen a counselor the week before this all happened, so I got the note and was able to write a makeup test. The rest of that semester was crap and I only finished the class with a D+, failing another class, which didn't impact my funding. But I got through it and that's what matters. I recently retook the class and got an A+ in it. Anyways, that was my worst experience in oversleeping. In college during finals week, I pulled an all-nighter writing a paper and studying for a final. The next day, I had an hour before the final and decided to take a 30-minute nap. I somehow slept through the alarm or turned it off and went back to sleep, and the only thing that woke me up was my friend banging on my door to celebrate finishing his last final. I woke up, looked at the time, almost cried and sprinted to the final. I got there sweaty and disheveled with around 45 minutes left. I somehow finished it and passed. If I had completely missed it, I would have had to stay on an extra semester just to get enough credits to graduate. Uni cramming for exams, so I was burned out. Figured, crap man, I'm 100% prepared and the exam isn't for half an hour. Sleep time be, so set an alarm for 15 minutes later and passed out head down on my table. Alarm either didn't go off or sleeping me just didn't give a frick. I woke up 1 hour into the 2-hour exam and WTF'd. I lived literally across the street from the science building, so I didn't even get dressed or anything. I just grabbed my calculator and keys and ran barefoot in the snow across the street into the building and sat in my boxers and wrote furiously for the hour I had left. Prof gave me the WTF look when I walked in and I just told him overslept I'm an idiot, and the guy was nice enough that when I handed in he told me to stick around, then gave me the extra hour in his office after cause he felt bad for me. Guy was a good guy and I got very lucky. I had stayed up all night reviewing notes for a final. Set my alarm, planning to wake early, get a good breakfast, clear my head, and do some last minute reviewing. Woke up and noticed the natural lighting inside of my room wasn't right and saw that my alarm had not gone off, and my final was in like 10 minutes. I had to do a half-awake panicky routine of triaging my hygiene needs, brush hair, put on hoodie, run out the door in that and PJ pants and flip-flops and sprint to my classroom on the other side of campus. Got in just as the exam started, passed it with an A. Not strictly oversleeping, but about 10 years ago, I moved from Austria to Berlin, Germany. So, as an Austrian, you're used to a whole bunch of public holidays. Austria is, at least officially, very Catholic, so every semi-important Catholic holiday is also a public one. Berlin on the other hand is the complete opposite. Very few public holidays. We recently got a new one, International Women's Day, the 8th of March. Yay. Even amongst all the other German states, they sometimes call it the atheist capital of Europe. So, anyway, yet another of these holidays came up, so I thought great, I can just stay in bed, chillax, maybe order a pizza, at around 1 p.m. Just when I was about to order some food, I got a text message from a work colleague. Hey, why aren't you in the office? I was shocked. What's going on? Why are my colleagues at work? So I looked up holidays in Berlin, and only then I realized that today wasn't a holiday here. So I quickly packed my stuff, went to the office, and told them that I overslept. Fortunately, my job back then had flexi time, so all I had to do was work later in the evening. It was a hard-learned lesson about how Berlin has very few actual holidays, and never even got to order that pizza. I took a nap once around 4 PM. I worked the next day at 7 AM. I woke up and looked at the clock. It said 6:15. Holy crap, I am going to be late to work. I got dressed in a panic and sped to work. I got into the parking lot at 6:55 PM. Wait, what 6:55 PM? It was then I realized I only took a 2-hour nap. Thank God I didn't go clock in. And this is why we use 24-hour. Got called the night before to cover a shift someone called out for. Said yep, I'd be there. Hurry home from being out with a friend. And set an alarm for early the next morning. Well, my iPad, what I use for alarms, decided to not charge overnight, and consequently died before my alarm could go off. Woke up 2 hours after I was supposed to be there. I got called in specifically because I'm one of their most reliable workers. I sure wasn't that day. Oops. Read this as, got called the night before, and thought whoa. My favorite overslept story was one year on April Fool's. My dad had my brother and I sneak into my mom's room and change her alarm clock to a few hours ahead. She woke up freaking out and started to call work like OMG I overslept, I'm sore. While she was saying this, my brother and I ran in the room yelling April Fools, we were little shoots. I got home from school dead tired, having not slept properly the night before. Just conking out then was not an option, so I decided to nap, then get up to finish my homework. I woke up to pre-dawn light, and the clock read 7:30, exactly when my dad came by to take me to school. I loudly shouted frick, grabbed my bag and bolted for the door, interrupting my mom and some very confused and alarmed guests just sitting down for dinner. All of these, the oh crap I'm gonna be late for schoolwork, then run about getting ready in 5 minutes and just about to leave, then notice it's PM not AM. I was up until 5 AM for some school function that the whole senior class participated in. They expected us to go home for an hour and then come back for a half a day of class and go to a pep rally. I got no sleep and went home and fell asleep. Woke up at 11. Apparently at some point my sister woke me up and said I had school. I said I'm not going to fricking school and rolled over. I don't remember doing that at all. I was having a bad time with my mental health, and despite having 3 alarms set, I finally got woken at 11:30 by my workplace calling the landline phone. Apparently they were about to call the police to check if I was okay. Freaking embarrassing, but glad that they cared and didn't just assume that I was just messing around. I overslept for an end of year exam and was about a 5-minute car ride away when my mum's car broke down and I was already late for it. I turned up about 15 minutes late. Thankfully got through the exam okay. Well, at that point just blame it on the car. They don't know. I tried to pull an all-nighter before one of my first finals in college. Exam was at 10 AM and around 8 AM I decided to head up to my dorm and take a quick little nap. I had set alarms and everything. IDK what happened, but my roommate's alarm woke me up at 10:02. IDK why was set for that, and I leaped off the bunk and sprinted across campus to the exam room. It was only 10:09 and no one had turned their exam in yet, so thankfully I was able to take it still, all while sweating with an elevated heart rate. Biggest adrenaline rush and last time I ever tried to pull an all-nighter. Missed a funeral after drinking a bottle of wild turkey with a friend, talking about our old friend who had died 38 years ago, and I still feel bad about it. Honestly, sharing memories like that with a friend, reminiscing about the recently lost, probably would have meant more to almost anyone than attending their funeral would have. Personally, I would much rather have friends talk about the good times over a bottle than feel obligated to go to some stupid ceremony. When I was in college I had to go home for a doctor's appointment one day, and so I had to take the 2-hour bus ride back to Chicago. I stupidly drank the night before and woke up later than I wanted. I didn't have a ride, so I had to walk to the gas station where the bus stop is, which was about 2-3 miles from campus and across a highway. It was really stupid of me, but it was early enough that there weren't any cars. I'm about 100 feet away from the gas station and I see my bus pulling away. I chased after it, but the driver didn't see me and he pulled onto the on-ramp. I had no choice but to sit at that gas station and wait 2 hours until the next bus came because there was no point walking back to campus. Not me, but another counselor at my summer camp overslept once and ended up not taking the campers up to shower, but one kid had soiled himself and really needed a shower. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.